Well, welcome everyone to Dementia Chats. Today we're going to have a real intimate conversation with a family. And I will let them introduce themselves here shortly. But if you're new to Dementia Chats, what we do here is talk with people living with dementia, all different types of forms, and hear their insights. And today I think you're going to find real interesting because we're going to hear a history of a family and dementia and some of the insights and things that they've learned along the way. So, a little bit about me for those of you that are new. My name is Lori LeBay. My mom lived with dementia for 30 years, and that is why I do what I do today. I have a company called Alzheimer's Speaks, which is about raising voices and educating people around the world to empower them and to hopefully remove the fear and the stigma so that we can all live a better life as we care for those living with dementia. So, True, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
My full legal name is Truthful Loving Kindness, and when I was little, my great grandmother lived with us on the summers, and she had dementia, and my current diagnosis is my mild cognitive impairment with Lewy body symptoms and cerebrovascular disease.
Okay, thank you. And Jackie Ann, you are True's mom. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
It is overwhelming for me, but I am so thankful in life. I'm gonna say right up front, I'm 85 years old. At 85, things were a lot different back when my daughter, and to me, I will refer to her a lot as Bindi because her given name was Belinda. And I haven't made the transition completely by a long shot. She'll always be my baby Bindi Boo. That's the way moms do. And yes, we had no idea. And her great grandmother was very much misunderstood by all of us. But the trip, she had Bindi go with her. Bindi was just before her freshman year in high school and made the trip. And we knew that grandma forgot and did need help and didn't know. But to the history then, she did end up in having to have care and everything else. And my mother, I took care of for 8 years with dementia.
Vascular.
Yeah. They didn't. The only thing they referred to it was Alzheimer's. And they said, the doctor, I remember when we were in with the doctor, and he said, well, she doesn't have Alzheimer's, but for all of the papers, we write dementia. That was at that time the only way of referring to it.
Yep.
But I had a head start then in learning and living with it without knowing about it. But with True's first association with you as a dementia, when her little fingers got going and she started spouting off about dementia people not being useless eaters, that she saw her grandmother grow spiritually when her body and when the dementia was getting worse. Grandma grew spiritually. She wasn't a useless eater. And I learned the workarounds very, very early. And I'm still doing the changes and working the workarounds. And if I can share that with somebody else so they can be helped, I appreciate you, Lori, so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I think this is, again, is going to be an interesting conversation. I think there's a lot of families that have history that hasn't really been documented properly by the doctors because it was never diagnosed or it was misdiagnosed, and people just had so much fear wrapped around it. So, we need to break that, and we need to get people understanding that even if somebody wasn't diagnosed, to mention those symptoms to their doctor so that there is some kind of history, even if it isn't, totally traceable by a diagnosis, that those symptoms are there. But again, I don't know if anyone's tracking that stuff either. So, but I think it will help a family look at the big picture like you are. True, you had a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that after 20 years, more than 20 years with dementia symptoms and trying to get a more accurate diagnosis, I've given up. My last current neurologist wants to send me again to San Francisco and more of the cognitive specialists for reevaluation, because I'm obviously not just my mild cognitive impairment, but I've gone through this, what do you call those rides? Roller coaster for more than 20 years, going into the city for the specialists, and they have not been able, I just don't fit the boxes. And so even though it is current days and we have good diagnoses, I won't have one because I'm giving up after 20 years.
Well, and I think we have better diagnosis, but by far not good, in my opinion. There's too many people that I hear, every time their doctor changes, their diagnosis changes. And I mean, you don't see that with cancer and heart disease and everything else out there. It kind of stays with you. But with dementia, it flips and flops like a pancake all the time out there. And, when you receive a new diagnosis, I know we've had discussions on Dementia Chats with you and the others on how frustrating that is. But that frustration ripples out to family and friends as well. When you came back and said, "Oh, now they say I have mild cognitive impairment," everyone's like, "What?" I mean, there's just no way what you have. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a scientist, but it's just such common sense for the symptoms that you have that it doesn't fit that box. And it's very frustrating for everybody with that. And I think it builds I hate to say it, but it builds a distrust.
Yes.
For the process. Mm-hmm. And that's not healthy for anyone. And sometimes it's, them changing the terms, which I think everybody gets caught up a little bit too much in the terminology. Because I remember when they first rolled out mild cognitive impairment, everybody pretty much had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's because that's all that really was talked about. Mm-hmm. And then the consensus was, there is nothing mild about this. My symptoms haven't changed. So first of all, the term itself was almost offensive to people, you're saying, well, it's no big deal. It's just mild. It's not a big deal. And
Yeah.
yet you can't work, and people are sitting there trying to get disability insurance, and that's not helping. And it's not an easy process, and hopefully that will get better over the years for sure.
I think part of it, oh, the thought is gone again now. Take on it. Part of it is gone.
Okay. That's okay.
He'll be back.
Maybe.
When and if it's needed.
Yep.
In time.
Exactly. Now, Jackie Ann, I want to ask you, because you're, and I want to make sure, was the grandma and the great grandma, were those both on your side of the family, Jackie Ann?
My side of Bindy's family,
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother was my dad's mother.
Okay.
And then her mother.
And my mother. And then me, and then Bindy.
Okay. Okay.
I did know my great grandmother.
Your maternal great grandma.
No, Grandma Spencer.
Oh, okay.
My grandmother's mother did not early. She didn't have symptoms of early dementia.
Okay. Okay. So, I'm kind of interested to know, between just the two of you, did True have her symptoms then before you, Jackie?
True did trail work when she was in high school, and we didn't know about
Lyme.
The tick-borne disease. Lyme disease, and her legs gave out on her right when she was still 18 because of Lyme disease.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up in a wheelchair, and it wasn't affecting at that time. It was Lyme disease. It wasn't dementia.
Well, I had more than one disease. Tick-borne disease is like a dirty needle. And so I had Lyme and Babesia and another one, and I had the worst case of Babesia that my specialist had ever seen, more resistant. It took 3 years of hard leaning over a bucket meds
with a diaper on
to work on Babesia, which basically is a brain. It acts like malaria, and you take anti-malarials to get done with it. And so we thought that my cognitive symptoms were from those diseases, but after 5 years of treatment, the cognitive symptoms stayed the same.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot at such a young age to be going through that.
Well, it was 30 years before we discovered that it was tick-borne disease. I went more than 30 years with no treatment whatsoever.
In a wheelchair, using her arms and legs as much as she could to keep them going. That's when she got Hero, and Hero did
the service dog.
The service dog was her being able to move around, mobility. I came up with the word. She's taught me to celebrate. and recognize, and when I can't find words, they've flown away like they always do a lot of the time. Be patient and they'll come back. But when they do, thank
they
you.
do.
If I need it, it'll happen. If it doesn't happen, I just thought I needed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good way to look at it.
That's my one of my current workarounds.
Okay. Well, because when you're stressed, symptoms seem to increase. That's what people say all the time. So
That's what it was I was going to say. One of the first things when you get reevaluated is, oh, of course, it's not showing like it should. It's showing here and there on tests, but not reliably. So it's probably, especially considering all the trauma in your life, this is probably trauma induced. And I try to say, this is why I went to a psychiatrist. And he said to start with, he didn't think that this was had anything to do with trauma or mood, but in 3 years, he wrote a letter saying, I do not think this is to do with mood disorder or past events that are not adjusted to. I forget the words, and every time I say that, they just kind of roll their eyes like I'm saying that. And so I've got to dig out the letters and all these things that they come up with. Obviously, it couldn't be dementia because there's too much disparity between my abilities and my disabilities. I've got too many remaining abilities. And so they come up with all these reasons that it must be. And I've got to have my brain together enough to try to come up with the replies and circumstances that will put them back into reality. And it's just a lot of work, and it doesn't feel like it has any purpose anymore. So that's why I'm dropping the project.
well, and that's a good point when you talk about, going to the psychologists or psychiatrists. So many people are sent that way. And I know even with my mom in the beginning, they said, oh, she's depressed, and well, who wouldn't be depressed if you can't, if you can't feel like you're thinking straight or able to do things that you used to do? Everyone would be depressed, and so it's kind of that chicken or the egg theory of what's causing what. And I think they like the answer of it's depression because then we'll just give you medication.
It's easy.
And then I'll have fixed you and you can go on your way, and we'll just monitor it. And they have their answers because, that's kind of their goal. Yep. And yet, because I hear that repeatedly from people all around the world trying to push in that direction. And yet it's greater than that. And the disease is not consistent. I mean, it has its highs, it has its lows, it has its triggers, and it isn't a flat line. This is always going to happen every single time. I mean,
with Alzheimer's. I mean, with Alzheimer's, it is more reliably a line, but the other types, it's not.
Exactly. And even I think with my mom, I mean, she had her highs and her lows, and I think primarily it was Alzheimer's. But when we did her brain autopsy, they said there was Lewy body, which can be really all over the board, and same with some Parkinson's, which we didn't really see a whole lot of. But by that time, I think she was more immobile, and so we weren't seeing the tremor. She wasn't trying to do things as much, but but then on the other hand, she lost her mobility. So, it's all kind of wrapped into one. And boy, you really need someone who I think has not only gone to school and been educated, but is actually experienced and really listens to their patients on what's going on. Because I think you guys are loaded with so much information that need more and more of it, in my opinion. And again, outsider, not a medical person, not an academic. But I think more of this lived experience information needs to get into their training, so that there's a practical approach and understanding of what actually is going on. And then with that, hopefully there will be support that comes with that, even if it's not out of the doctor's office. They can be referred to people like Teepa Snow and her pack, or Alzheimer's Speaks. There's many of us out there, in addition to the Alzheimer's Association or the Alzheimer's Society or the Alzheimer's Foundation, the Lewy body, and the FTD and associations as well. There's so much out there that people don't know is available. And to me, that would alleviate, I think, the guilt the doctors feel of giving a diagnosis that they don't know how to help you, and I think it would help the person with dementia and their family get the support that's needed, even if the answers aren't always there. This quick fix, I don't see. I mean, everybody would love a cure. I don't think there's anyone who would deny that. But in the meantime, people need support, and we're really falling down badly, in my opinion, on getting people the support they need and helping them connect to all the different types of supports that are out there. True, like when you got your diagnosis, were you referred to any type of support?
No. And as a matter of fact, later when I found support, I suggested that these be provided to people with a diagnosis, and they said no, that is not an option. There's way too much red tape in the decision of what is shared and what is not. We don't have that authority.
Yeah, it's they can have you sign 1 million forms. Why not one more for that?
Right.
That's what's so frustrating. And again, I'll just give a plug for Dementia Map, which is something Dave Wiedrich, who has the Memory Cafe directories for 6 countries, and I developed, where people can access free information. And if people have services, products, or tools, they can list for free, or they can do an upgraded plan as well. But something where people can dig, because every family situation is different. Every person with dementia is different, and they have a right to choose what's going to work for them too.
And my blog's in there.
Yes, it is, which is loaded with great information. It's absolutely incredible to me how badly we are falling down in that area, and yet how much those supports, like even like the memory cafes, I'll just use that as an example. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say those have been life-changing for us, not just for an individual living with dementia and their care partner, but for their whole family and circle of friends, because they share real practical things that happen. They share the good, the bad, and the ugly. They support one another through everything, and they have that peer group, and it gets rid of that. I would say most people feel kind of abandoned and alone after a while with this disease. A lot of people walk out of one's lives, and filling that hole alone, I think, is huge. When you feel understood, versus talking to people that don't understand. And many of them don't want to understand. They want you to be better, just be better, so we don't have to talk about this. I don't have to worry about this. And to me, again, we've lost that piece of compassion and understanding and growth, and that comes through all these difficult diagnoses as well. We lose the ability to love on different levels. And I think, Jackie Ann, you had mentioned about the spirituality of growth, through the disease. And
spirituality and growth.
Yes, yes, yes. Which was just such a difference that even though True wasn't around that much because she lived in California, still she was in. Oh, that's something you did, was she, in her busy life and her situations in life, she called her grandma every morning at 9:30.
Oh.
At 9:30 in the morning, Grandma knew that Bindi was going to be telling her good morning. And that was...
She did that 12 years.
Wow. But how meaningful, and what a great connection, to be able to do that.
And therefore, my mom's last Thanksgiving, they came up and were with us. And wasn't that when it was? When you wrote the poem that we had on the little thing that you pass out at the funeral? The poem after... Yeah, anyhow, Bindi, come in out of the snow. Here she had dementia and was dying. She was at the end of her life.
It was a hallucination.
She still remembered Bindi's presence, and Bindi was in California, and it was snowing outside. Come in out of the snow with caring and loving.
Wow.
Was still very evident, that demeanor, that all the way through, all the way home, all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful to be a part of that. Yeah, it was one of the most treasured things in my life to be able to be with and care for my mother through those years.
I think people don't, and I know everyone's a little different, but I don't think we talk enough about the benefits of caring for somebody else, and what the carer gets out of it. Like all of life, I mean, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I found, for caring for my mom, for 30 years, and I wasn't primary. My dad was in there, and then I kind of filled in, and then my mom ended up living in a community, but I still saw her pretty much every day. There was just this cohesiveness, this peacefulness, this new layers of ways to communicate, where it got me more attentive than what I used to be, looking at the nonverbals and just all the little things that I think we miss when life is so fast paced, or the calmness and the peacefulness within them that invites us to just sit next to them and slow down, get out of the rat race.
And it gives us an opportunity for learning, for dealing with our own issues. I mean, I was 12, I think, when we were told that Dad was probably dying, and having those conversations about death, about families, and dealing in the context of death with Dad at that age gave me a different context for growing up. And it took 15 years when he died. But then at the last, I came back. I was living in Italy, and I came back so that I could be that second person caring for him. And the experiences of being around Dad and my great-grandmother and my grandmother gave me a different context for dealing with my own symptoms when it came my turn. I learned from my great-grandmother that persistence, if it doesn't work one way, try another angle. Try a different way of doing it until, if it's really important, you will achieve what you need to get done. And that real strong persistence came from watching my grandmother with dementia, and the strong desire to have the family involved in learning about dementia. You know, whether you can only do so much, you're one person and you're not them. You can't make their decisions for them. But I saw so much accusations of lying, accusations of not caring, because we are continually losing our context. Great-grandma always came with a gift. It very seldom was appreciated because she didn't have the context anymore for the person that she was giving it to.
But she gave it.
She gave gifts, but they weren't appreciated. They were, they and she were discounted. But now I see myself, I am losing the context for what my grandsons appreciate. I'm losing the context for what they enjoy in life. So how can I give gifts that will be appreciated when I don't have that ability anymore? My name is Truthful Loving Kindness, but I am losing the ability to communicate those characteristics. So it is bound to appear that I no longer have truthful loving kindness. I am losing the ability to identify reality. So how can I be truthful? I am losing the ability to show consideration of others. I can't understand what they're saying. I can't, there's constant misunderstandings with, I can't have one sound going. I've lost, I forget what the neurologist called it, prioritizing sound. It all goes together in a bucket. So if someone here is singing or humming, I cannot focus on anything else. That is the only thing that I hear. It makes it so that when people are talking to me or when I'm trying to think something through, I cannot do it. So it appears that that consideration of others, that love, is missing. It isn't. It's just my ability.
In that very thing that she's speaking of, on this machine in front of me, with her daughter, Charlene, and her son, Brad, yesterday afternoon, because Brad spoke to me about being sad that his mom was upset at him because he was singing and humming in the background.
How
While
is Brad going to feel if he hears this, Mom?
Brad is going to be, I think, I pray, I trust God that good is going to come of it, because what you didn't hear was a marvelous, marvelous gift for his sister that she needed from her brother. The reason Brad came down here was to reach out and be close and love his mother. But that he felt that he had heard, he didn't understand, neither one of them did at that moment. So thank God I was here, because the gift God gave me after my stroke last year was the singing and the coming out in rhyme. And what was coming out of Brad right behind us while we were talking with Charlene, you could see on her face, she understood what her brother was singing. And he was singing praise to God in a beautiful, beautiful song that was just coming out of his very being of love and appreciation for his baby sister.
In other words, it was not a written song.
Oh, it was not a written
It was
song.
impromptu song.
It was coming out moment by moment of praise and just appreciation for her. It was this very spiritual thing. And it was going right to the heart of Charlene, of her knowing where her brother is coming from at this moment, spiritually. And I'm sitting right there, because it is the gift God gave me when my mouth was mush and scrambled just a little over a year ago with a full-blown stroke. So I just accept, but things come out in rhyme, in song, and Brad just takes over and just blooms. And see, you've never experienced that as his mom, because he's in the background, and it wasn't, that's truthful loving kindness. She didn't know that it wasn't a song that he knew and was just singing. It was something that was being given to him word by word, emotion, breath at a time.
It wasn't that I didn't know, Mom. I was trying to do something with technology for Zoom at the same time, and I couldn't do that because there was sound. I can't do things and have sound at the same time.
And we have to love and be honest and be able to talk things through, or else that way good can come. We can do our workarounds and all be on the same page.
I was appreciating the sound. I just couldn't have that at the same time as I was trying to do something else.
I realize that, especially as you explained what you did to Lori about the sounds not being able to be at the same time.
Yeah, I can't process thought with sound going on. It doesn't work.
And that is such a common symptom that so many people have. And people relate it to kind of background noise as we age. That gets more difficult. I'm 64 and I know I have problems with that. But I know that you experience it on a different level, and it drives me crazy when there's too much going on and stuff. And so, it's one of those things that people don't know until, like Jackie Ann says, until we have the conversation about it. And sometimes our conversations start not with niceties because we're frustrated. But that's kind of being human, and then being able to work through it. It's not that, you were and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but again, not that you didn't appreciate what he was doing. It just complicated what you were trying to do at that moment. And he probably had no idea of that symptom.
Love covers everything, and that's what counts. And Ray, that's what we have to work at and apply ourselves to keep, or else it disappears.
Mm-hmm.
If we just have to be insistent as a dog after a bone to keep love growing, not disappearing. Things get our understanding and our communication in love instead of frustration.
But I think if he can understand that example would be helpful to so many others that don't understand it, because it really is a beautiful example of how that symptom can pop up and in what type of scenario where someone is just trying to bring joy and light into the room, and they have no idea that how could this be frustrating, but when we don't see or feel those symptoms, we don't know what you're going through.
Yeah.
Until it's discussed.
I think it's so wonderful that he can compose things like that. And I would love to hear them, but not at the same time as I'm trying to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
We've got all day. We to go home in the morning. We've got all day today. And I thought last night how thrilled your dad would have been. Lori sees the look on your face. Mm-hmm. He wrote me a poem.
Dad did.
Her daddy that covered. I was 15 for my 16th birthday. Wrote it for all after we are married and someday have a son. Mm-hmm. And all the way through. And those kind of that feeling in those poems, that a whole thing came through day after day when he was holding and working with our family. And now to hear it come out of Brad. Wow.
Kind of a circle thing.
How what a blessing. Yep. And you can cut that part out too.
No, I don't, depends
whatever.
on how it fits in.
Right. Keep what is beneficial to others and cut out the other.
Yeah. Well, I'm a firm believer too that what we say here, someone needs to hear, but again, that's my belief, and I want to be respectful of your thoughts on that. But there are so many times, like I've been on the stage for stuff and for keynotes and training, and I'll like, where'd that come from? And it's like, well, somebody needed to hear that, is what I think after the fact. And sure as heck, somebody always walks up on stage and says, thank you so much for that. Whatever it was, I needed to hear that today. And it's like, okay, just one of those guided messages, that's channeled through us. And I think, as we share our personal stories, I just think they're so helpful to so many other families and professionals that are dealing with dementia and who want to be able to care better. And, we can't care better if we don't understand the symptoms and, what triggers things. And Brad might have just seen a mood change in you that he wasn't expecting, but not understanding what the trigger is. And understanding the trigger is everything in keeping the calm and the peace and in caring for people well. And again, I think it's that emotional giving and understanding of our relationships and how we work together and how we can work the best together as we're all changing, dementia or not. I mean, that's just something that we do in life, is adapt. And when symptoms pop up, we have to adapt a little more, and sometimes a little faster. And sometimes it's a little wrong and it's a little off, because it's trial and error of what's going to work and what's not going to work. And there shouldn't be any shame or embarrassment in any of that. It's just, that's how we build our relationships. That's a key factor to it, in my opinion.
And even things like my chin is in my hand a lot now.
Mhm.
The reason is because, and sometimes my husband will come up and say, put your chin in your hand, because my tremors are in my neck now too. So it isn't that I'm not interested in what is happening. That's holding my head more still so that it's not a distraction, not as much of a distraction for the conversation, but it's another thing that can easily be misunderstood. And people think I'm not interested in what's happening.
Oh, that I see now. That's something new that I learned that I've never heard anybody say before. So I appreciate that, because that's something that I can pass on to people who might be having the same problem, as an option for them, because it's important for all of us to feel as much in control of our bodies as possible, and to feel comfortable in settings. And yeah, I have heard from people, who have some Parkinson's and things, how uncomfortable they are when they tremor, because they feel that loss of control, and they worry people are looking at them differently depending on what the setting and stuff is. So what an empowerment to lean on your chin, and
We
when
learn our workarounds.
yeah,
but it's good when others can be aware that it is a workaround, so that it can sometimes change their perception from, in this case, disinterest.
Yep.
To understanding why I'm doing it.
If we communicate, we have to be willing and able to other people have to give us the
time and space.
Yes, thank you. The word flew away. The opportunity for them to listen and hear our work, that it is a workaround, that we needed a workaround, that we're doing the best we can. We don't want to distract. And right now, that's a workaround, is just that holding my head from wobbling.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's like I said, that's a wonderful tip for people. Jackie Ann, is there anything that you would like to say? I know that you aren't formally diagnosed with dementia, you said before we came online, in terms of where you're at with things.
Where I'm at 85 is just absolutely one of the most thankful people that could be. I know life is moment by moment. I have to slow down and know where I am, where I put my foot, and being emotionally not just present, physically present in the moment, but emotionally present in the moment, in order to put my foot and not fall. Well, after doing that for a period of time, I realized that workaround wasn't just for physical. More and more, I think it's healthy for all of us to be willing to let go and make the most of everything we have with the workarounds we can do safely, but also be body, soul, and spirit present with our soul, with our feelings, with our emotions, and not let them get out of control. Because the out of control emotions put us out of control physically, and we get in trouble. But God, help me to go slow. Help me to go slow enough to feel where I'm at in that moment, so I don't get myself where I don't want to go, which into bad areas, just physically, emotionally, if I'm going slow enough.
That's great advice. That's absolutely wonderful advice. I'm a firm believer in feeling the emotions. We have to move through them instead of stuffing them and then letting them explode, within us, and then everything comes out sideways. And I don't think we do that enough as a society or a world these days. I think we've taught people to stuff them, that it's not appropriate. And
it's dangerous. I'm sorry. Our family has been through, like True mentioned, trauma, a lot of trauma. Her daddy was no way expected to live. He had lost his lung with cancer clear into the shoulder, and it was growing exponentially as he was leaving the hospital. But yet, the doctors were amazed when he was able to, they went away.
For a period too.
He lived for 15 years.
Mm-hmm. And the murder and everything. There's a lot of stuff.
Like Bindia brought it up, so I can say it. It was a murder of my only son when his cancer came back. God is bigger than all my stuff.
No,
and I've learned that emotional, spiritual growth, how it affects the physical, how we can deal with the physical if we have our whole.
Your son wasn't the one that had cancer, though.
Oh, no. It was the daddy. Your daddy had the cancer and died of cancer 15 years after when you came.
Yes, but it was after his son had been murdered, and he lost a lot of that oomph.
Mm-hmm. Right. The trauma of losing our son brought his cancer back. Life is short. We just make the most of every second.
Yep, you gotta live fully. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Unless, True, do you have anything else you want to add?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing, your family story and insights. I think it'll help a lot of people. And to our audience, I always say, like, click, and share. It doesn't cost you anything. Takes you a couple of seconds. But boy, these conversations that we have here are so powerful and can really help so many. So help us push them out and get the word out so that other families can have these types of conversations, because they matter. They matter to everyone.
They matter. They change lives.
Exactly. Well, thank you both for taking time to be with us today, and we will see you next time. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Bye-bye.